The worst locust crisis in decades is ravaging East Africa, threatening the food supply for millions of people. Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia are at the center of this latest outbreak. You can see in this video just how massive the locust swarms have been across the region.
These bugs have infested farmland and destroyed crops. Farmers are calling on the international community to help prevent a food crisis.
Kuna misimu miwili, lakini ule msimu mwingine wa mwezi wa 4 unakuwa mfupi na saa nyingine hatupati chakula. Huu ndio ule msimu tunategemea, na kama zitatuharibia kabisa, tutakaa njaa tu throughout the year mpaka next year mwezi wa 10 ndio tutapanda. This year mwezi wa 10.
The United Nations says the region needs around $76 million to combat the crisis. Officials warn the locust outbreak will spread across the entire continent of Africa and into other parts of the world if action isn't taken.
Bad is it?
Well, as you just mentioned, $76 million bad. That's how much the United Nations says it needs to combat this outbreak. And they're making no bones about it. They need that money now. It's the worst in 70 years for Kenya and in quarter of a century for Somalia and Ethiopia. And just to give you a sense of how big these swarms are, one was spotted in a part of Kenya that contained about 200 billion of these creatures, and in the sky it occupied a space 3 times the size of New York City. And as the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN has warned, they could increase 500-fold by June if not contained and checked immediately and spread elsewhere. Now, part of the problem is that these locusts are very difficult to track. They move very quickly, but they're not just a scary invasion. They also eat food. Even a small swarm of locusts can consume enough food for 35,000 people, and farmers are complaining that about 90% of their crops have already been destroyed. The locusts are now moving towards Uganda and towards South Sudan. South Sudan already under terrible, terrible strain from food insecurity. And if you consider that over 20 million people in East Africa are already facing food shortages due to periodic drought and flooding, you have a very serious problem when locusts start eating their only source of food.
What exactly is causing the outbreak to escalate the way it has?
Well, you know, as many people have mentioned, these swarms look almost biblical, and while it may be very tempting to blame some kind of hierarchy very quickly, they only live 3 to 5 months, but in that time, a population can absolutely explode if left unchecked, and that is what actually happened in this particular instance.
So, Deborah, you mentioned that the UN is calling for $76 million to help combat the crisis. If money isn't helping, when will the season actually end? In other words,
well, the season ends in about June when there are drier conditions, but by then it's almost too late. The 70s spraying. But if they get the money now, by April it's too late because you've then already created this problem. If they get the money soon, then they can start the spraying, because the idea is to get the locusts while they're still young and hopping and before that population booms. It's very difficult to track them, but if you can have some kind of surveillance, you can then follow them, because these locusts can move about 90 miles in just one day. And climate experts are warning that there's going to be continuing unpredictable weather.
It sounds biblical, but as the world grapples with the COVID pandemic, the continent of Africa is facing another plague, locusts. As Nick Schifrin reports, the small insects pose a serious threat to food security throughout the region.
In East Africa, the air carries 2 plagues. Locusts, swarms with as many as 50 billion insects. As COVID-19 threatens the people, locusts threaten people's livestock and food.
They are being a menace, eating our grass and even getting into our homes. When we slaughter our livestock, we find locust faces in their stomachs. Without a doubt, they are affecting our health, our animals' health, and the environment.
In February, 8 East African countries experienced an initial swarm, the largest for parts of the region in 70 years. And now, a new wave is 20 times larger than the first wave.
Past 3 years, they faced droughts. This year, they faced heavy rains and
spread coronavirus. The UN is instead pushing for the use of biopesticides and remote data collection, and is working with governments to ensure the people who are fighting the locusts can